Let's skip the pleasantries, Adrian said from beside me. He'd insisted on being here, though he'd promised to let me lead. You asked for this meeting to make an offer. Make it. Charles's smile tightened. Very well. We're prepared to offer Clara $100,000 as a gesture of goodwill. In exchange, she signs a non-disclosure agreement about the family and releases any claim she might have regarding the canceled wedding. 100,000. They doubled their offer from Talia's phone call, which meant they were scared. Adrian had been right. They knew I knew something, even if they weren't sure what. That's generous, I said carefully. Liam's head snapped up. Hope flickered across his face, and I felt sick. Did he really think I'd take their money and disappear? However, I continued, watching the hope die. I'm not interested. Clara, be reasonable. Charles leaned forward. $100,000 is more than reasonable compensation for a canceled wedding. You're right, I agreed. For a canceled wedding, it would be generous. But we're not just talking about a wedding, are we? The room went silent. Charles's lawyer whispered something urgent in his ear. Adrian remained perfectly still beside me, but I could feel his satisfaction radiating like heat. I don't know what you mean, Charles said, but his voice had lost its smooth edge. I opened the folder in front of me. Adrian's team had prepared this. Every page a careful weapon. I mean the trust fund you were counting on accessing through your son's marriage to me. The $8.3 million you needed to save your failing firm. Charles went pale. Liam's mouth fell open. Their lawyer started shuffling papers frantically. That's ridiculous, Charles said, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. We had no knowledge of your personal finances. Really? I pulled out a document, slid it across the table. Because this is an email from your office to a private investigator, dated 6 months before Liam proposed. You hired someone to look into my father's estate. You knew exactly what I was worth before your son even picked out a ring. That's privileged information, their lawyer sputtered. How did you? I have very good lawyers, Adrian interrupted smoothly, who know very good judges. Everything in that folder is legally obtained and admissible in court. Should Miss Mitchell decide to pursue legal action for fraud, emotional distress, and conspiracy to commit financial exploitation. I practiced this next part in the mirror last night. Practiced keeping my voice steady, my face calm. You didn't leave me at the altar because your son got cold feet. You planned it. You used me for 6 years, gathering information, setting up a timeline that would give you access to my money the moment we married. And when something spooked you, when you thought I'd figured it out, you humiliated me publicly rather than risk me protecting my assets. Clara, that's not. Liam started. Don't. I held up my hand. Don't say my name. Don't try to explain. We both know the truth now. Liam shut his mouth. At least he had the decency to look ashamed. His father, though, Charles was calculating. I could see him running numbers in his head, trying to find an angle. What do you want? Charles asked finally. This was the moment Adrian and I had planned for. The moment where everything shifted. I want your company, I said simply. The silence that followed was absolute. That's insane, Charles said. My firm is worth $30 million on paper, I interrupted. $5 million in reality once your debts and bad investments are factored in. You have 6 months before you have to start liquidating assets. 3 months before your biggest clients find out you've been using their money to cover your personal losses. How did I know this? Adrian's investigators had been thorough. Very thorough. Turns out when you have unlimited resources and a personal vendetta, you can find out almost anything. Charles's face went from pale to red. You can't prove that. I don't have to prove it. I just have to suggest it. One conversation with the right reporter, one anonymous tip to the financial regulators, and your entire house of cards collapses. I lean forward. Or you can sell to me. I pay you $7 million, enough to cover your immediate debts and give you a comfortable retirement. You announce it as a planned succession. Your employees keep their jobs. Your reputation stays mostly intact. $7 million is highway robbery, their lawyers said. $7 million is mercy, Adrian corrected, given what your client attempted to do. Charles looked at his son, then back at me. I could see him weighing his options. Pride versus survival. Reputation versus reality. And if I refuse, he asked, then I spend my $8 million making sure everyone knows what you try to do. Every client, every competitor, every reporter in this city. I buy advertising space telling my story. I fund investigations into your business practices. I make destroying you my full-time job. My voice didn't shake. And trust me, Mr. Devereaux, I have nothing but time and motivation. Adrian had warned me this was a risk, that threatening someone like Charles Devereaux could backfire. But I learned something important these last few days. Powerful people stay powerful because nobody challenges them. Because victims stay quiet, take the settlement, disappear. I was done disappearing. I need time to think, Charles said finally. You have 24 hours, Adrian said. After that, the offer expires and Miss Mitchell pursues other remedies. We stood as one. I gathered my folder, straightened my shoulders, and walked toward the door. Behind me, I heard Liam say my name one more time. Desperate, pleading. I didn't turn around. In the elevator, after the doors closed, my hands started shaking. Adrian noticed. You did well, he said quietly. I threatened to destroy a man's entire life. You offered him a way out he didn't deserve. Adrian looked at me seriously. Don't confuse mercy with weakness, Clara. What you did in there took strength. It took anger. Anger can be strength when it's directed properly. The elevator doors opened to the lobby. How do you feel? I thought about the question. How did I feel? Not guilty. Not satisfied either. Something else. Something that felt like balance being restored. I said slowly, like I just took the first real breath in 6 years. Adrian smiled. Good. Because this is just the beginning. My phone buzzed as we walked outside. A text from an unknown number, but I knew who it was before I opened it. They're already looking for you. Be careful. I showed Adrian the message. He read it, his expression darkening. Who's V? I asked. Someone who wants to make sure you know you've made enemies. He pulled out his phone, typed something rapidly. I'm assigning security to you. Don't argue. People like the Devereaux don't take threats lightly. You think they'd actually hurt me? I think desperate people do desperate things. And you just backed Charles into a corner with no good way out. He looked at me seriously. From here on out, you're not just fighting for revenge. You're fighting for survival. The words should have scared me. Instead, they crystallized something that had been forming since I walked out of that church. The old Clara would have been terrified, would have backed down, taken the settlement, disappeared like they wanted. But the old Clara died at that altar. And whoever I was becoming wasn't afraid of a fight. I stood in front of my hotel room mirror, wearing a black dress that cost more than my old monthly rent. Adrian had sent it over with a note. For tonight, armor comes in many forms. Tonight was the charity gala at the Metropolitan Club. The same gala Liam and I were supposed to attend together as a newly married couple. Instead, I was going alone. Well, not alone exactly. Adrian would meet me there. But I'd be walking in solo, head high, showing everyone who'd watched me fall apart that I'd put myself back together. Only this time, I put myself together sharper. My phone had been buzzing all day. Friend asking if I was okay. Reporters asking for interviews. A few brave souls asking if the rumors about my inheritance were true. I'd ignored them all except Sophie, who'd sent me a text that just said proud of you with a fire emoji. The wedding invitation sat on my dresser. Cream cardstock with gold lettering. Liam's mother's choice, obviously. I'd kept it for reasons I couldn't quite explain. Maybe as a reminder. Maybe as fuel. I picked it up, ran my thumb over the embossed letters. Mr. and Mrs. Charles Devereaux request the honor of your presence at the marriage of their son. Honored, right? I walked to the fireplace, the one fancy thing in my hotel suite I hadn't used yet. Turned on the gas. Watched the flames leap to life. Then, without ceremony, I dropped the invitation into the fire. The paper caught immediately, curled at the edges, turned black. The gold lettering melted last, holding its shape for a moment before dissolving into ash. I watched until there was nothing left but smoke and the ghost of what should have been. You belonged to someone who didn't exist, I whispered to the ashes. Adrian was waiting in the lobby when I came down. He wore a tuxedo like he'd been born in one, perfectly tailored, elegant without trying. When he saw me, something shifted in his expression. Not attraction exactly, or maybe it was, but tempered with respect. You look dangerous, he said. Good. I took his offered arm. That's what I was going for. The gala was everything I remembered from the one time Liam had taken me. Crystal chandeliers, string quartet, women in gowns that cost more than cars, and men who owned the buildings those cars were parked in front of. Old money and new mingling uncomfortably, everyone pretending they belonged. We walked in together, and the whispers started immediately. Adrian Vescary with Clara Mitchell. The jilted bride with the most eligible and dangerous bachelor in the city. People's phones came out. By tomorrow, this would be its own news cycle. Let them talk, Adrian murmured, reading my tension. They talked about you last week. Might as well give them something better to say. He was right. Last week's gossip was pity. This week's would be speculation. Huge improvement. We made it maybe 10 feet into the room before I saw them. The Devereaux, all three of them, standing near the bar like they owned it. Which, given how much they donated to this particular charity, they basically did. Talia saw me first. Her champagne glass paused halfway to her mouth. Then Charles turned, and his expression went from pleasant to furious in a heartbeat. Liam just looked sick. 22 hours since we gave them the ultimatum, Adrian said quietly. No response yet. They're probably hoping to intimidate you into backing down. They're going to be disappointed. We walked straight toward them. Every step felt like a mile, but I didn't falter. When we reached them, Adrian spoke first. Charles, Talia, always a pleasure. His voice dripped sarcasm. Liam, you look unwell. Wedding planning too stressful. Liam flinched. Talia's face went rigid with poorly concealed rage. Adrian, Charles said, his voice tight. I didn't realize you were attending. Last-minute decision. Claire needed an escort, and I've always been a sucker for charity. He smiled like a shark. Speaking of charity, I heard your firm made a very generous donation this year. Surprising, given your current financial situation. The words were calculated. A reminder that Adrian knew everything, that we held all the cards. I don't know what you're referring to, Charles said, but his hand shook slightly on his whiskey glass. Of course not. Adrian turned to me. Clara, didn't you want to speak with Mrs. Devereaux about something? This was my cue. Adrian and I had practiced this. Not rehearsed, but discussed. Well, I wanted to say. How I want to say it. I looked at Talia directly. I wanted to thank you. She blinked, confused. Thank me? For calling me a charity case. For making sure I knew I wasn't good enough for your family. I kept my voice level, conversational, like we were discussing the weather. Because if you hadn't, I might have actually married your son. And then I'd be tied to a family that values money over people. That would have been the real tragedy. Talia's face flushed. How dare you? No. How dare you? You used me. You researched my family, my finances, my dead father's legacy, and you decided I was a resource to be exploited. And when that didn't work, you threw me away publicly rather than deal with me like a human being. People were watching now, not even pretending not to. Phones were definitely recording. This would be everywhere by midnight. Clara, Liam said, stepping forward. Please, can we talk privately? I looked at him, really looked at him. Tried to find the boy I'd fallen in love with in college. The one who'd studied with me until 3 a.m., who'd brought me coffee when I had early shifts, who'd told me I was his everything. He wasn't there. Maybe he'd never been there. There's nothing to talk about, I said. You made your choice. I'm making mine. Which is what, exactly? Charles asked. Humiliating us publicly? Making threats you can't follow through on. Actually, Adrian said, pulling out his phone, about those threats. You have 2 hours left on your deadline. After that, Miss Mitchell's lawyer's file with the Financial Regulatory Commission. Just thought you should know. Charles's face went purple. You can't be serious. I'm always serious about consequences, Adrian replied. Ask anyone. We walked away before they could respond. I heard Talia's voice rising behind us. Charles trying to calm her down. Liam calling my name one more time. I didn't look back. Adrian led me to the balcony, away from the crowd and the music and the whispers. The city stretched out below us, millions of lights in the darkness. You okay? He asked. I don't know. My hand was shaking again. I just confronted the people who destroyed me in front of half of high society. You confronted the people who tried to destroy you, Adrian corrected. There's a difference. They failed. You're still standing. I leaned against the railing, let the cold air clear my head. What happens now? Now we wait. Either they accept our offer in the next 2 hours, or we go to war. He stood beside me, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. Are you ready for that? Was I? War with the Devereaux meant months of legal battles, public scrutiny, possibly dangerous retaliation. It meant committing to being someone I'd never been before, someone who fought back. But looking out at that city, I realized something. I've been fighting back since the moment I walked into Adrian's office. Since I'd chosen anger over sadness, action over acceptance. I'd already changed. The question wasn't whether I was ready. The question was whether they were ready for what I'd become. I'm ready, I said. Adrian's phone buzzed. He looked at it, then showed me the screen. An email from Charles Devereaux's lawyer. Subject line, acceptance of terms. They folded, Adrian said, something like satisfaction in his voice. The firm is yours. Mine, a multi-million-dollar company that had tried to use me, was now mine. The poetry of it was almost too perfect. What do I do with it? I asked. Whatever you want. Run it. Sell it piece by piece. Turn it into something better than what they made it. Adrian looked at me seriously. But Clara, once you sign those papers, you're not just the girl who got revenge. You're a businesswoman with power. That comes with its own complications. I think I can handle complicated. I think so too. He smiled, and for the first time it reached his eyes. You surprised me. Most people talk about getting even. You actually did it. We stood there for a moment, the sounds of the gala filtering out to us, the city sprawling below. I thought about my father, working himself to exhaustion, so I could have choices. About my mother's pearls, still around my neck. About the girl who'd stood at that altar 4 days ago, broken and lost. She'd been so afraid of being alone, terrified of not being enough. But standing here now, I realized something crucial. I'd never been the one who wasn't enough. They'd been the ones too small to see what they had. Thank you, I said to Adrian, for helping me. Thank me by succeeding, he replied. That's the best thanks anyone can give. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You think you've won. You haven't. T. My stomach dropped. There was a photo. Me, standing alone in my dress, the exact moment I realized what was happening. Someone had leaked it to the press already. By tomorrow, I'd be a meme. Adrian watched my face carefully. Still want to drown? Or are you ready to get even? And that's when I realized he'd known exactly who I was the whole time. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the distant sound of the city waking up below. For 3 perfect seconds, I forgot everything that had happened. Then reality crashed back in like a freight train. I grabbed my phone. 47 missed calls. 132 text messages. My social media notifications had exploded into the thousands. I opened Instagram and immediately wished I hadn't. The photo was everywhere. Me at the altar, looking lost and small, with captions ranging from sympathetic to savage. When he realizes you're not the one. Dodged a bullet, king. This is what happens when you punch above your weight. I threw the phone across the bed and headed for the shower. The water was scalding hot, and I stood under it until my skin turned pink, trying to wash away the humiliation that clung to me like smoke. By the time I made it downstairs to the hotel restaurant, I convinced myself that hiding in my room would only make things worse. The breakfast spread looked like something from a magazine. Fresh pastries, fruit cut into perfect shapes, coffee that smelled like it cost $20 a cup. I was reaching for a croissant when I saw him. Adrian sat at a corner table with a newspaper spread in front of him, wearing different clothes but the same calculated calm. He looked up, caught my eye, and gestured to the empty seat across from him. Every instinct told me to walk away. Instead, I grabbed my coffee and headed over. "Sleep well?" he asked, folding his newspaper with precise movements, like someone who just became a viral meme. I sat down, noticed the headline on his paper. Devereaux wedding scandal rocks high society. My stomach turned. Is there anything they didn't publish? The interesting parts. He pushed the paper toward me. This is surface-level gossip. What they're not reporting is far more useful. Would you trust a stranger if he knew your pain before you spoke it? Because I was about to make a choice that would change everything. I scanned the article. It painted Liam as the victim of cold feet, me as the unfortunate casualty of a man not ready for commitment. His family wasn't mentioned except in passing. No one questioned why a man who claimed to love someone would humiliate them so publicly. They're protecting the Devereaux, I said slowly. Of course they are. Charles Devereaux owns half the media outlets in this city. Adrian's tone was casual, but his eyes were sharp. You were never going to get a fair story. Not from them. And you care about this why? He leaned back, studied me for a moment. I told you last night. I find honesty interesting. And what happened to you wasn't about love or timing or any of the romantic nonsense they're selling. It was about money. The word hung in the air between us. Money. Not heartbreak. Not incompatibility. Money. Liam's family has money, I said. They made sure I knew I didn't have enough of it. Exactly. Adrian pulled out his phone, swiped a few times, then turned it toward me. Your father, Thomas Mitchell. He died 2 years ago, correct? My chest tightened. How do you know that? Because I make it my business to know things. His voice softened slightly. He worked construction most of his life. Saved every penny. Invested wisely despite never having formal training. When he died, he left everything to you in a trust. A small trust, I corrected. Enough to help with bills, maybe a down payment on a house someday. Nothing that would interest people like the Devereaux. Adrian's expression shifted to something that looked almost like pity. Clara, your father's trust isn't small. The property values in the areas he invested in have tripled in the last 18 months. That trust is currently worth close to $8 million. The restaurant tilted. I gripped the edge of the table. $8 million. That couldn't be right. I'd seen the paperwork when Dad died. It was modest, comfortable, but not life-changing. That's impossible, I whispered. The trust doesn't fully vest until you turn 30 or get married, whichever comes first. Adrian's voice was gentle but firm. Your 30th birthday is in 6 months. The Devereaux knew this. Liam knew this. The pieces started clicking together in my head. The sudden proposal after years of Liam saying he wasn't ready. His mother's increasing hostility as the wedding approached. The way his father kept asking questions about my father's estate, disguised as polite small talk. They wanted access to the money, I said, my voice hollow. They needed access to the money. Charles Devereaux made some very bad investments last year. The firm is hemorrhaging cash. Marrying you would have given them legal grounds to contest the trust terms, claim marital rights to your assets. Adrian set his phone down, but someone convinced them there was a problem, that you'd figure it out and protect your assets. So they pulled the plug before you could. My hands were shaking. 6 years. 6 years of my life with someone who saw me as a bank account. Who let me believe I wasn't good enough when the whole time I was too valuable. Who told them I knew? I asked. That's what I'm still working on. Adrian signaled for more coffee. But here's what I do know. They didn't reject you because you were poor, Clara. They feared what you'd inherit. And now they're scrambling because in 6 months, you'll have full control of money they were counting on. The waiter refilled my cup, but I couldn't drink it. My mind was spinning through every conversation, every dismissive comment from Talia, every time Liam had encouraged me to talk about my father's financial planning. I thought he was being supportive. He'd been gathering intelligence. Why are you telling me this? I looked at Adrian directly. You don't know me. This isn't your problem. Because I believe in consequences. He met my gaze steadily. And because people like the Devereaux think they can do whatever they want without anyone pushing back. I'd like to prove them wrong. What would you get out of it? Adrian smiled. It wasn't kind. It was the smile of someone who'd been waiting for the right question. The satisfaction of watching entitled people realize they're not untouchable. Plus, your father's trust includes property in the warehouse district. Property I've been trying to buy for a development project. Help me, and I'll make sure you never have to worry about money again. So this is a business deal. Everything's a business deal. The question is whether you're interested in doing business or letting them get away with what they did to you. I thought about yesterday, standing at that altar. Talia smiled. The 300 people with their phones out. The way Liam couldn't even look me in the eye. The news articles painting me as some desperate girl who'd aimed too high. What would you do? Heal or get even? Let me know in the comments, because I was done being the victim in someone else's story. What do you need from me? I asked. Adrian's smile widened. For now, just don't sign anything the Devereaux send you. They'll try to offer you a settlement, something that sounds generous but locks you out of your full inheritance. And meet me here tomorrow morning. Same time. Why tomorrow? Because I'm going to show you exactly how much your father left you. And then we're going to discuss how to make the Devereaux pay for what they try to take. He stood, dropped cash on the table that probably covered both our breakfasts 3 times over, and walked away like he owned the place. Which, knowing the Vescaris, he probably did. I sat there with cold coffee and a head full of numbers I couldn't quite process. $8 million. My father, who'd worked himself to exhaustion, who'd packed my lunches in paper bags and driven a truck with 200,000 miles on it, had somehow built me a fortune. And the man I'd loved had tried to steal it. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Don't trust Adrian Vescari. Call me. Ed. Liam. Of course. Now he wanted to talk. I deleted the message and ordered another coffee. Whatever game was being played, I was finally ready to learn the rules. Adrian's office wasn't what I expected. I'd pictured something cold and corporate, all glass and steel, and uncomfortable furniture designed to make visitors feel small. Instead, it was warm. Dark wood bookshelves lined with actual books, not just decorative spines. A massive desk that looked hand-carved. Windows that showed the city stretching out below like a map of possibilities. He was standing at those windows when his assistant showed me in, hands in his pockets, staring at something I couldn't see. You came, he said without turning around. You knew I would. I hope. He turned, gestured to the leather chair across from his desk. But hope and certainty are different things. Sit. I sat. He opened a drawer and pulled out a folder thick enough to be a novel. When he placed it in front of me, I saw my name printed on the tab in neat block letters. Everything you need to know about your father's estate, Adrian said. Property deeds, investment records, the trust documents with annotations. I had my lawyers review it overnight. I opened the folder. The first page was a summary. Assets totaling $8.3 million. Property in 3 states. Stock portfolios. Even a small stake in a tech startup that had apparently gone public last year. I'd had no idea. None. How'd he do this? My voice cracked. He worked construction. We lived paycheck to paycheck. He lived paycheck to paycheck, Adrian corrected gently. But he invested every bonus, every overtime check, every tax refund. He bought property in neighborhoods everyone else ignored because he saw potential where others saw risk. Your father was smarter than anyone gave him credit for. Tears burned behind my eyes. Dad used to stay up late at the kitchen table with spreadsheets and highlighters, telling me he was just organizing bills. I thought he was stressed about money. He'd been building me a future. He wanted you to have choices, Adrian continued. The trust was structured so you couldn't access it until you were mature enough to handle it. 30 years old or married, whichever came first. He probably thought marriage meant you'd have support, a partner to help you navigate it. Instead, I almost married someone who wanted to take it all. Yes. Adrian sat on the edge of his desk, close enough that I could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. But you didn't, and that matters. Hit that like button if you believe every betrayal deserves justice, because what came next would require me to become someone I'd never been before. I closed the folder, my hand steady for the first time in 2 days. You said you could help me. How? First, we protect your assets. I have lawyers drafting paperwork right now that will lock down the trust so tightly not even God could touch it without your permission. He pulled out his phone. Show me a document. Sign this, and the Devereaux have no legal recourse to your money. Ever. And second, his smile was sharp enough to cut. Second, we make them understand what they lost. Not just the money. You. I'm not interested in revenge for revenge's sake. This isn't revenge. It's consequences. Adrian stood, paced to the window and back. Charles Devereaux's firm is failing. He needs an influx of capital within the next 6 months, or he'll have to start selling assets, laying off employees, admitting publicly that his golden reputation was built on borrowed time and bad choices. Your trust money was his lifeline. So without me, He's ruined. Without you, he has to actually work for his survival, face the consequences of his decisions, watch his empire crumble because he raised a son who thinks people are disposable. Adrian's voice was cold. I can accelerate that process. Apply pressure in places he's vulnerable. Make sure every client knows his firm is unstable. Or I can offer him a deal. I buy out his firm at a fraction of what it's worth. He gets to retire with some dignity intact. His employees keep their jobs, and you get to watch him beg me for mercy. The idea should have felt wrong, vindictive, but after everything they'd put me through, it felt like justice wearing expensive clothes. What do you get out of this deal? I asked. Besides my father's property. Adrian looked at me for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. Honestly, I get to take down someone I've wanted to destroy for years. Charles Devereaux testified against my uncle in a fraud case 10 years ago. Testimony we later proved was perjured. My uncle died in prison before we could clear his name. So this isn't just about you, Clara. This is personal for me too. Finally, the truth. This wasn't some stranger offering help out of the goodness of his heart. This was a man with his own agenda who saw me as a useful piece in a bigger game. At least you're honest about using me, I said. I prefer to think of it as mutually beneficial using. He didn't look apologetic. You get your revenge and financial security. I get mine. Everyone wins except the people who deserve to lose. I stood up, walked to the windows he'd been staring out of earlier. The city looked different from up here. Cleaner. Like all the mess and pain happened at ground level, and up here everything was just strategy and power plays. If I do this, I said slowly, I'm not just a victim anymore. I become someone who actively destroys people. You become someone who holds people accountable. Adrian corrected. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. Because victims wait for justice. Survivors take it. The words hit like a match striking. Survivors take it. I'd spent 6 years being the understanding girlfriend, the one who didn't make waves, who fit herself into whatever shape Liam and his family needed. And where had that gotten me? Humiliated and alone. Maybe it was time to stop being understanding. I need to think about it, I said. Of course. Adrian handed me a business card. This is my private number. Call me when you decide. But Clara, what? The Devereaux are already planning their next move. I got word this morning that they're drafting a settlement offer. Something insulting that makes them look generous, and you look greedy if you refuse. You don't have as much time to think as you'd like. I took the card, felt the weight of it in my palm. Heavy stock paper, embossed lettering. Everything about Adrian Vescary screamed quality and danger in equal measure. How do I know I can trust you? I asked. You don't. His honesty was almost refreshing. But right now, I'm the only person telling you the truth about what you're worth. That has to count for something. I left his office with the folder tucked under my arm and my head spinning. The elevator ride down felt longer than it should have. When I stepped out into the lobby, my phone rang. Liam's mother, Talia. I stared at the screen, watching it ring. Every instinct said don't answer. But curiosity won. Hello. Clara, darling. Her voice dripped false sweetness. I think it's time we talked about moving forward. Privately. There's a check with your name on it, if you're reasonable. My jaw clenched. How much? 50,000. More than generous, considering the circumstances. 50,000. For $8 million worth of humiliation and 6 years of my life. I almost laughed. I'll think about it, I said, echoing Adrian's words. Don't think too long, dear. Generosity has an expiration date. She hung up before I could respond. I stood in the lobby, people flowing around me like I was a rock in a stream, and made my decision. I pulled out Adrian's card and dialed his number. He answered on the first ring. That was fast. Talia just offered me 50,000 to go away, quietly. And I want to know how badly we can make them regret that offer. Adrian's laugh was low and dangerous. Now we're talking. Come back upstairs. We have work to do. As I walked back to the elevator, I caught my reflection in the lobby's mirrored walls. I looked different. Not broken. Not lost. Something harder had taken root behind my eyes. The girl who stood at that altar was gone. Someone else was taking her place. And that someone was done playing nice. 3 days later, I sat in a conference room that probably cost more per hour than most people's monthly rent. Adrian's lawyers flanked me on both sides, their presence solid and reassuring. Across the table sat Charles Devereaux, his lawyer, and Liam. Notalia. Apparently, she thought herself above this kind of meeting. Liam couldn't look at me. Good. I didn't want to see his face anyway. Charles looked at me like I was a problem to be solved. A minor inconvenience in his carefully planned life. His hair was silver, perfectly styled. His suit probably cost more than my car. Everything about him screamed old money and older privilege. Miss Mitchell, he began, his voice smooth as aged whiskey. I appreciate you taking this meeting. I know the last few days have been difficult. Like I'd had a bad day at work instead of being destroyed in front of everyone I knew. I stood at the altar in a dress that cost more than my car, staring at an empty space where my future was supposed to be standing. 300 people watched me realize, in real time, that I'd been abandoned. The church smelled like lilies and expensive perfume, and the silence was so thick I could hear my own heartbeat echoing off the vaulted ceiling. My name is Clara Mitchell, and this was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. The pianist had stopped playing 10 minutes ago. My bouquet of white roses was starting to wilt in my trembling hands. I kept my chin up, kept my shoulders back, the way my mother taught me before she died. Never let them see you break, she'd whispered from her hospital bed, pressing her pearl necklace into my palm. Those pearls were cold against my collarbone now, the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. Have you ever stood in front of everyone you love, only to realize you've been lied to? That moment when your brain can't quite catch up to what your gut already knows? That's where I was. Frozen. Waiting. Hoping there was some explanation that would make sense of why Liam Devereaux, the man who'd promised me forever, had simply vanished on our wedding day. The whispers started in the back pews and rippled forward like a wave. I caught fragments. Where is he? Is she just going to stand there? I knew something was off about this whole thing. Phones came out. I watched the little lights pop up across the church as people started recording. My humiliation was about to go viral. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. Liam's father, Charles Devereaux, sat in the front row with his arms crossed, looking at his watch like I was wasting his time. His wife, Talia, wore a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. She'd never liked me. From the moment Liam brought me home, she'd made it clear that a girl who grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment in Queens didn't belong in their world of country clubs and charity galas. My bridesmaids clustered together near the side entrance, their expressions torn between sympathy and secondhand embarrassment. My best friend Sophie kept mouthing, "Do you want to leave?" But I couldn't move. My legs felt like they'd been filled with concrete. The priest cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should." He didn't finish the sentence. Nobody knew what to say. What's the protocol when the groom ghosts his own wedding? I turned to Charles, my voice steadier than I felt. "Where's your son?" He looked at me like I'd asked him to explain quantum physics. "Clara, I think it's clear that Liam has reconsidered." Reconsidered. Not had an emergency. Not got into an accident. Reconsidered, like I was a car he decided not to buy. He would have told me. I said, even though I was starting to doubt everything I thought I knew. Talia stood up, smoothing her designer dress. She walked toward me with the kind of careful steps people use when approaching something fragile. Or pathetic. When she got close enough that only I could hear, she leaned in. "It's best you move on, dear. Marrying into our family isn't for charity cases." The words hit harder than a slap. Charity cases. That's what I was to them. Not Liam's college sweetheart. Not the woman who'd helped him study through law school, who'd believed in him when he wanted to quit. Just a charity case in a white dress, standing alone at an altar she couldn't afford. The bouquet slipped from my hands and hit the marble floor with a soft thud. White petals scattered everywhere, like tiny pieces of my shattered future. I looked at Talia, at her cold smile, at the satisfaction dancing behind her eyes. And in that moment, something inside me didn't break. It froze. "Where is he?" I asked again, my voice dropping to something dangerous. Talia's smile widened, and she tilted her head toward the side door. What I saw there would change everything. Through the side door, I saw him. Liam stood in the courtyard with his phone pressed to his ear, laughing. Actually laughing. Not trapped, not injured, not dealing with some emergency that justified leaving me at the altar. Just laughing like it was any other Saturday afternoon. My vision blurred at the edges. The church tilted. Someone grabbed my elbow, Sophie probably, but I shook them off. I needed to see this clearly. I needed to understand what was happening to my life in real time. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, drop a heart in the comments. Because what came next was worse than anything I could have imagined. Liam ended his call and turned toward the church. Our eyes met through the doorway. For a second, maybe two, I thought I saw guilt flash across his face. Then it was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like relief. He walked toward me with his hands in his pockets, casual, like he was approaching me at a coffee shop instead of the altar where I'd been waiting for him. "Clara," he started, and I held up my hand. "Don't." My voice came out sharper than I intended. The guest pressed closer, phone still recording. This was going to be everywhere by tonight. The girl who got dumped at her own wedding. "Just tell me why." He glanced at his parents. His father gave him a small nod, like they'd rehearsed this. Like this was planned. "You're amazing," Liam said, using that smooth voice he saved for closing business deals. "But my family thinks we're rushing into things. We need more time. More time. We've been together for 6 years. 6 years of supporting him, loving him, building a future with him. And he needed more time? You couldn't tell me this yesterday?" My voice cracked despite my best efforts. "You had to let me stand up there in front of everyone." Talia stepped forward, placing a hand on her son's shoulder like she was protecting him from me. "This is precisely why the marriage wouldn't work, dear. You're being hysterical." Hysterical. I was being hysterical because the man I loved humiliated me in front of 300 people. The church felt like it was closing in. Every face turned toward me with pity or curiosity or barely concealed glee at the drama. I didn't cry. Not yet. Crying would mean they'd broken me, and I wasn't ready to give them that satisfaction. Instead, I turned to face the guests. 300 witnesses to my destruction. Mrs. Patterson from Liam's firm had her phone aimed directly at me. The Johnsons were whispering behind their programs. My Aunt Carol looked like she might pass out from secondhand embarrassment. "Thank you all for coming," I said, my voice echoing in the silent church. "The wedding's canceled. There's food and drinks at the reception hall that's already been paid for. Please, enjoy it on behalf of the bride who apparently wasn't good enough." Sophie gasped. Liam's face went pale. "But Talia?" Talia smiled. And that smile told me everything I needed to know about who was really behind this. The church emptied faster than it filled. People couldn't get out quick enough, probably rushing to their cars to call everyone they knew with the gossip. I stood there in the silence that followed the storm, watching dust particles float through the stained glass light. My wedding dress felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. The train had been stepped on so many times it was dirty at the edges. I bent down and started picking up the scattered rose petals, one by one, because I didn't know what else to do with my hands. That was the moment I learned silence screams the loudest. Would you still forgive after this? Tell me in the comments below, because I honestly don't know if I ever could. 6 months ago, Liam had proposed at sunset on a beach in the Hamptons. He'd rented the entire section, hired a photographer, had rose petals scattered in a heart shape on the sand. He'd told me I was his forever, his always, his entire world. I believed every word because back then, his eyes held something that looked like truth. Now I wondered if any of it had been real, or if I'd just been convenient. The supportive girlfriend who didn't ask for much, who was happy with takeout and movie nights while he climbed the corporate ladder at his father's firm, who smiled and nodded through dinners with his parents while they made subtle digs about my background, my career, my clothes that came from department stores instead of boutiques. The church janitor appeared with a broom. He looked at me with genuine sympathy, the kind that only comes from someone who's seen their own share of heartbreak. "Miss, I can finish this," he said gently. I looked down at my hands full of crushed petals and realized how pathetic I must look. The jilted bride, cleaning up her own disaster. I dropped the petals, and they drifted back to the floor like tiny white flags of surrender. I walked to the front pew and sat down, my dress pooling around me. I reached up and touched my mother's pearls. She'd worn them on her wedding day, had promised me they'd bring me luck. I wonder what she'd say if she could see me now. Probably something wise about how the right person wouldn't make you question your worth. But she wasn't here to say anything, and I'd never felt more alone. My phone buzzed. Texts flooded in. Some from friends asking if I was okay. Others from acquaintances who just wanted details. I turned it off. The veil. I reached up and pulled it from my hair, watching it float to the ground like a ghost. That small act felt significant somehow, like I was shedding a version of myself that believed in fairy tales. I stood up, grabbed my small clutch purse from the altar, and walked toward the exit. Each step echoed in the empty space. When I reached the door, I turned back one last time. The church looked different now. Smaller, less sacred, just a building where dreams came to die. Outside, a cab was idling at the curb. The driver looked up from his phone. Where to, miss? I climbed in, my dress bunching up around me in the back seat. I stared out the window at the church I'd never stepped foot in again. Anywhere but here. The Celestine Grand rose up from the city like a glass and steel fortress. Chandeliers visible even from the street, doormen in uniforms that probably cost more than my rent. It was the kind of place where celebrities stayed when they wanted privacy and billionaires went when they wanted to be seen. It was also wildly out of my budget, but I didn't care. I had a credit card and a need to be somewhere that felt as far from my real life as possible. The lobby made me feel small in the best way. Marble floors so polished I could see my reflection. Crystal chandeliers that threw rainbow light across everything. Leather couches that looked like they cost more than my car. This was a place built for people who'd never experienced public humiliation, who'd never been called a charity case at their own wedding. The woman at the front desk looked up as I approached. Her name tag said Michelle, and her expression shifted from professional to concerned in about 2 seconds. "Are you checking in?" she asked carefully, like she wasn't sure if I was lost or having a breakdown. "I need a room." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Whatever you have available." Michelle's fingers flew across her keyboard. She glanced at me, then back at her screen, then at me again. I could see her trying to figure out my story. The wedding dress was kind of giveaway. "We have a deluxe suite available," she said. "But I'm actually going to upgrade you to our luxury penthouse suite at no extra charge." I blinked. "Why?" She leaned forward slightly. "Because I got left at the altar 3 years ago, and I wish someone had done something kind for me that day. So this is me doing that for you." Something in my chest cracked. Not broke, just cracked enough to let a little bit of feeling through. "Thank you," I whispered. "You're going to be okay," Michelle said, handing me a key card. "I promise you'll look back on this and realize it saved you from something worse." The elevator ride up felt eternal. When the doors opened, I stepped into a hallway that smelled like expensive candles and possibilities. My room, the penthouse suite, had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire city. A king bed with sheets that probably had a thread count higher than my bank balance. A minibar. A bathroom with a tub big enough to drown in. I hung my wedding dress in the closet and stared at it. All that white fabric that was supposed to mean purity and new beginnings. Now it just looked like a costume from a play that got canceled. "You belong to another life," I whispered to the dress. I changed into the hotel robe, poured myself a tiny bottle of vodka from the minibar, and sat on the edge of the bed. My engagement ring caught the light. Princess cut diamond, platinum band, everything Liam's mother had picked out, because apparently I couldn't be trusted with that either. I twisted it off my finger and set it on the nightstand with a soft click. I needed air. I needed noise. I needed something to drown out the voice in my head replaying every moment of today's disaster. The hotel had a bar on the ground floor. I'd seen it when I came in. I got dressed in the only other clothes I had, jeans, and a simple black top I'd packed for the honeymoon we'd never take. When I walked into the bar 20 minutes later, the music was low and the lighting was dim and everything felt like a secret. I ordered whiskey because wine felt too romantic and beer felt too casual. The bartender slid it across to me without judgment. That's when I saw him in the mirror behind the bar. A man sitting 3 seats down, watching me with the kind of attention that should have felt creepy but somehow didn't. Dark hair, darker eyes, wearing a suit that cost more than my entire wedding probably had. He raised his own glass slightly, like a toast. And for the first time all day, I felt something other than broken. I didn't look directly at him. Not yet. Instead, I watched him in the mirror, the way his fingers drummed once against his glass before going still. Calculated. Controlled. Everything about him screamed dangerous in a way that had nothing to do with physical threat and everything to do with the kind of power that bends rooms to its will. Have you ever met someone who entered your life when everything fell apart? Tell me your story below, because I'm still not sure if mine was fate or a warning. Rough day. His voice came from closer than expected. He'd moved to the seat beside me without making a sound. I took a sip of whiskey, let it burn down my throat. What gave it away? The fact that you're drinking top-shelf whiskey in a hotel bar at 4 in the afternoon, wearing jeans with mascara tracks down your face. He said it matter of fact, not cruel. Also, the wedding ring tan line on your finger. I looked down at my hand. He was right. The skin where my engagement ring had been was a shade paler than the rest. A ghost of what should have been. So you're observant, I said. Congratulations. And you're defensive. Also understandable, given the circumstances. He signaled the bartender for another round. I'm not here to make it worse. Then why are you here? He considered the question like it actually mattered. Because I've seen that look before. The one that says you're trying to decide if you want to fall apart or burn everything down. He turned to face me fully, and I find the latter far more interesting. I should have been offended. Should have told him to mind his own business. Instead, I found myself asking, which one do you think I should choose? Neither. He took a slow sip of his drink. Falling apart is temporary relief. Burning things down is temporary satisfaction. Both leave you with nothing. Spoken like someone who's never been humiliated in front of 300 people. You'd be surprised what I've been through. There was something in his eyes, a flash of old pain wrapped in steel. But here's what I know for certain. Better humiliated once than miserable forever. The words hit different than I expected. Not like comfort, but like truth delivered without cushioning. I looked at him properly for the first time. Sharp jawline, slight scar above his left eyebrow. Hands that looked like they'd built things and broken things in equal measure. You say that like you know what happened to me. I don't need to know the details. Wedding dress in a hotel room. Drinking alone. That look in your eyes like you're calculating how much it would cost to disappear. He shrugged. The story tells itself. And what story is that? Someone didn't deserve you. You probably spent years trying to be enough for them. Today you found out you never had to be. He set his glass down with deliberate care. You're not heartbroken. You're furious. There's a difference. He was right, and I hated that he was right. The anger felt cleaner than the sadness. Less like drowning, more like fuel. I don't even know your name, I said. Does it matter? If we're going to keep having this conversation, yeah. The corner of his mouth lifted. Not quite a smile, but close. Adrian. Adrian Vescari. The name hit me like cold water. Vescari. I'd heard that name before, whispered in the same tone people use for hurricanes and market crashes. The Vescari family controlled half the real estate in the city and most of the politicians. Old money mixed with new power, the kind of people who made problems disappear with a phone call. You're one of those Vescaris, I said slowly. Unfortunately. He didn't sound apologetic. And you are? Clara. Clara Mitchell. Well, Clara Mitchell. He stood, buttoned his suit jacket with one smooth motion. You have two choices tonight. You can stay here and drown in what happened. Or you can come have dinner with me and remember you're still alive. I should have said no. Should have recognized this for what it probably was, some rich guy looking for a distraction with a vulnerable woman. But something in the way he looked at me suggested he wasn't offering rescue. He was offering something else entirely. Why would you want to have dinner with someone you just met? Someone who's clearly a mess. Because mess is honest. He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. And I'm tired of people who pretend to be perfect. Besides, you look like someone who might actually tell me the truth if I ask you a question. That's rare. Before I could answer, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression shifted, became unreadable. Interesting, he muttered. What? He showed me the screen. It was a news alert. Devereaux wedding scandal. Groom abandons bride at altar. Talia. Even in defeat, she couldn't let it go. I showed Adrian the message. He read it, his expression hardening. She's not wrong to be worried, he said quietly. People like the Devereaux don't disappear quietly. They regroup. Plan. Come back harder. Then I'll be ready. Will you? He turned to face me fully. Because this isn't over, Clara. Taking their company was the opening move. They'll spend every day looking for ways to take it back, to destroy your reputation, to prove you didn't deserve any of this. Are you prepared for that fight? I looked at the message again, thought about everything that had brought me to this moment. The humiliation, the betrayal, the discovery of my father's legacy, the choice to stop being a victim and start being something else. I've spent 6 years trying to be what other people wanted, I said slowly, trying to fit into a world that was never going to accept me. I'm done with that. If they want to fight, they'll get one. But this time, I'm fighting for myself. Adrian studied my face for a long moment, then nodded. Good. Because starting tomorrow, we have work to do. The firm needs to be restructured. Your assets need to be protected. And you need to learn how to operate in a world where everyone wants something from you. Sounds exhausting. It is. He smiled slightly. But it's better than the alternative. We went back inside. The party continued around us, oblivious to the war that had just been declared in whispers and signed documents. I saw the Devereaux leaving early, Talia's face tight with rage, Charles looking like he'd aged 10 years in one night. Liam trailed behind them, small and defeated. I felt nothing watching them go. No satisfaction, no regret, just the calm certainty that I'd made the right choice. Sophie found me near the end of the night. She grabbed my hands, eyes wide. Is it true? She asked. Did you really take his family's company? It's true. Oh my God. She hugged me tight. I don't know whether to be proud or terrified for you. Both, I said, hugging her back. Definitely both. When I finally made it back to my hotel room, I was exhausted. The kind of exhaustion that comes from holding yourself together through something that should have broken you. I kicked off my heels, unzipped the black dress, and stood in front of the mirror in my underwear. I looked different. Not just the expensive haircut Adrian had insisted on, or the professional makeup. Something in my eyes had changed. Something harder and clearer. The woman in white was gone. The girl who believed in fairy tales and happy endings had died at that altar. But someone new had taken her place. Someone who knew the world was cruel and decided to be crueler. Someone who understood that power wasn't given, it was taken. Someone who would make the Devereaux wish they'd never met her. I picked up my phone, opened the camera, and took a photo. Posted it to Instagram with a simple caption. New beginnings. Within minutes, the likes and comments flooded in. Some supportive, some vicious, some just curious about what would happen next. I turned off my phone and climbed into bed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The lawyers would finalize the paperwork. The media would have questions. The Devereaux would plot their revenge. But tonight, I let myself feel something I hadn't felt in days. Victory. 6 weeks later, I stood in my new office on the 42nd floor, looking down at the city that had watched me fall and watched me rise. The nameplate on the door read Clara Mitchell, CEO, in clean, professional letters. It still didn't feel real. The Devereaux firm, now officially the Mitchell Group, had been completely restructured. I kept the good employees, the ones who actually worked instead of coasting on the family name. I'd fired the ones who'd been complicit in Charles's schemes. And I brought in new talent, hungry people who reminded me of my father, building something from nothing. The company was leaner now, honest, making money the right way instead of cutting corners and exploiting people. It would take time to rebuild the reputation, but we were getting there. Adrian knocked on my open door. Got a minute? For my partner in crime? Always. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. What's up? He sat down, looking unusually serious. I wanted to talk to you about the warehouse district property. The one your father owned that I wanted to buy. Right. The original reason you helped me. I leaned back in my chair. What about it? I don't need it anymore. He pulled out a folder, set it on my desk. My development project fell through. Financing issues. So the offer's off the table. I stared at him. You're telling me you spent 2 months helping me destroy the Devereaux for nothing? Not nothing. He smiled slightly. I gotta watch them fall. That was payment enough. Adrian, keep the property, Clara. Build something with it. Something your father would be proud of. He stood up. Besides, I have a feeling you'll do more interesting things with it than I would have. He left before I could respond. I opened the folder he'd left behind. Inside was a handwritten note. For what it's worth, you have been fine without me. You just needed someone to remind you how strong you already were. Ugh. I sat there for a long time, holding that note, feeling something shift in my chest. Adrian Vescari, the dangerous man with his own vendetta, had given me back something I'd lost. Not money or power, though he'd helped with those too. He'd given me back myself. My phone rang. Unknown number, but I answered anyway. I wasn't afraid of unknown numbers anymore. Clara Mitchell, I said professionally. Clara, it was Liam. His voice sounded rough, like he hadn't slept in days. Please don't hang up. I should have. Every instinct said to end the call, block the number, move on. But curiosity won. You have 30 seconds. I'm sorry. The words tumbled out fast. I know that's not enough. I know nothing I say will fix what I did. But I need you to know I didn't know about the trust at first. My father told me after I'd already proposed. And I was weak, Clara. I chose my family over you, and that was wrong. Is there a point to this call? My voice was colder than I intended, but I didn't soften it. The point is you deserve better. You deserve the truth. He paused. And you deserve to know that what you did, taking the firm, restructuring everything, it saved people's jobs. My father would have run it into the ground. You actually care. I know I care. I don't need your validation. I know, but I needed to say it anyway. Another pause. Are you happy? The question surprised me. Was I happy? I thought about my new office, my new life, the respect I'd earned instead of begged for. Thought about the fear that still woke me up at 3 a.m. sometimes, the pressure of running a company, the constant awareness that people were waiting for me to fail. I'm not sure happy is the right word, I said honestly. But I'm alive, really alive, for the first time in years. That's better than happy. Good. He sounded like he meant it. That's good, Clara. You deserve that. He hung up without saying goodbye. I stared at my phone for a moment, then set it down. That was probably the last time I'd ever hear from Liam Devereaux. And I was okay with that. The door opened again. My assistant, Marcus, a sharp kid from Brooklyn who reminded me of my younger self, poked his head in. Ms. Mitchell, you have a visitor. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's urgent. Who is it? She says her name is Vivian Devereaux. My blood went cold. Vivian, Liam's younger sister. The one family member who hadn't been at the wedding, who I'd never actually met. The mysterious V, who'd been sending warnings. Send her in. Vivian Devereaux walked into my office like she owned it. She was younger than me, maybe 25, with dark hair and eyes that missed nothing. She wore jeans and a leather jacket, completely different from her family's usual designer everything. Clara Mitchell, she said, looking around my office with apparent approval. Nice place. Better than what my father had. What do you want, Vivian? She sat down uninvited, crossed her legs. I want to help you. Help me do what? Survive. She pulled out her phone, showed me a photo. It was a document, financial records of some kind. My family's planning something. They're trying to find dirt on your company, anything they can use to prove you're not fit to run it. My mother's been calling in favors, talking to old clients, spreading rumors. Why are you telling me this? Because they deserve what you did to them. Her voice was fierce. My whole life, I watched them use people, destroy anyone who got in their way. I'm tired of it. And honestly, you're the first person who's ever successfully fought back. I want to make sure you keep winning. I studied her face, looking for the trap. What do you get out of this? Freedom. She smiled, and it was bitter. When you destroyed my father's company, you destroyed his hold over me. The trust fund he controlled, the threats he used to keep me in line, all gone. So consider this payback for accidentally liberating me. You're risking a lot, going against your family. They stopped being my family when I realized they were monsters. She stood up. Check your email. I sent you everything I have. And Clara, watch your back. My mother doesn't give up easily. She left as quickly as she'd arrived. I opened my email and found the file she'd mentioned. Documents proving Talia's attempts to sabotage my company. Evidence of bribery, blackmail, conspiracy. Enough to bury them completely if I wanted to. I forwarded everything to Adrian with a simple message. Thoughts? His response came immediately. Finish it. But did I wanna? I'd already taken their company, their reputation, their power. How much revenge was enough? When did justice turn into cruelty? I walked to my window, looked down at the city stretching out endlessly. Somewhere down there, the Devereaux were plotting their comeback. Somewhere, Liam was trying to figure out who he was without his family's name. Somewhere, my father's ghost was watching, hoping I'd make him proud. I thought about the girl who'd stood at that altar, who'd believed love was enough, who'd thought being kind and accommodating would earn her a place in the world. She'd been wrong about so much, but she'd been right about one thing. She deserved better, and she'd become better. I pulled out my phone and called Adrian. I'm not going to use Vivian's information to destroy them, I said when he answered. No, because I already won. Using this would just be cruelty, and I'm not cruel. I'm just not a victim anymore. Adrian was quiet for a moment. You're sure? I'm sure. Let them plot and scheme. Let them waste their energy trying to take me down. I'll be too busy building something real to notice. You know they won't stop. Neither will I. I smiled at my reflection in the window, but I'll stop them my way, by being better than they ever were, by building something that actually matters instead of just accumulating power. For what it's worth, Adrian said quietly, I think you made the right choice. Really? The man who wanted revenge doesn't think I should take it. Revenge is easy. Being better is hard. I could hear the smile in his voice. And you, Clara Mitchell, have never taken the easy way. We talked for a few more minutes about business, about plans, about the future. When we hung up, I felt lighter somehow. Like I'd finally put down a weight I'd been carrying since that awful day at the church. The sun was setting over the city, painting everything gold and red. My phone buzzed with notifications. Board meeting tomorrow. Interview with a major publication next week. Charity event where I'd been asked to speak. My calendar was full, my life was complicated, and nothing was certain. But it was mine. Every difficult decision, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt. Mine. I pulled up Instagram, saw that my followers had tripled since that first New Beginnings post. People were interested in my story. The girl who got left at the altar and came back stronger. Some saw me as inspiration, others as a cautionary tale. Some just liked the drama. I didn't care what they saw. I knew who I was. I typed out a final post. To everyone asking what comes next. I'm building something my father will be proud of. I'm honoring my mother's memory by never letting anyone make me small again. I'm living the life I was too scared to claim before. That's what comes next. That's what always should have been. Before I could second-guess myself, I hit post. The likes started immediately. Comments flooded in. Some supportive, some critical, some just curious. I read through a few, then closed the app. The validation was nice, but I didn't need it anymore. I needed me. And finally, after 6 years of trying to be someone else's version of enough, I had me back. The woman in white was gone. The woman in black had taken her place. And she was just getting started. Thank you for following Clara's journey from heartbreak to power. If you want to see what happens next, if you're curious about how she navigates her new life, about what the Devereaux do in response, about whether Adrian becomes something more than just an ally, then subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. Part 2 is coming soon. The Hidden Estate and the Devereaux Secret, where Clara discovers her father left her more than just money. The Devereaux reveal their final card, and Adrian's true motives come to light. Drop a comment below telling me what you think Clara should do next. Should she forgive Liam? Trust Adrian completely? Go after Talia one more time? Your thoughts matter, and they inspire the next chapters of this story. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications. Share this with someone who needs to hear that betrayal isn't the end. It's just the beginning of something better. See you in part 2.